Hey guys, welcome back to the channel Meet Praneeth. So today we have Tess with us, and she is the managing attorney at DGO Legal in Seattle. And you might have already come across her post on LinkedIn talking about O1 visas, EB-1 and whatnot. So I'm very happy to have her here and talk about some EB-1 particular questions and discussion so that you can benefit from it. And now I'll let Tess take the stage and just introduce herself, and then we'll dive into questions as we go. Thank you so much, Tess, and stage is all yours.
Sure. Thank you so much for connecting me to this platform and for providing so much useful information. I am an attorney, like you said, and I work exclusively in immigration. I work for the firm DGO Legal. We are pretty much a remote firm. We're a modern firm. We are pretty new, a few, 5 years old now. And our mission is to basically deliver modern immigration representation. And that includes using technology to make our clients' lives easier and being obsessed with our clients, customer obsessed. And so that's our drive for the firm. And our firm was built by immigrants themselves. We have an Italian and Argentinian immigrants who started the firm. My background is in employment-based immigration. I worked at a firm doing high volume tech company employment-based immigration before I ended up at DGO for some of the Fortune 500 tech companies. So I've been on both sides. I've seen what it's like from the inside of those tech companies, and I know what you've experienced in terms of it being very difficult to talk to your attorney, talk to the company, know what's going on, have any control over your immigration journey, and now being a little bit more on the other side of things and helping people who are managing that. And I'd like to just be able to give people more autonomy over their immigration journey.
That sounds really great. And I think, would it be possible to also expand a little bit on your journey, like how you started, what made you start your immigration career or attorney career in immigration, specifically in the employment based?
Sure. Yeah. So I kind of fell into immigration in a way, but I have a very personal connection to it as well. I have a grandmother, someone in my life that I've considered my grandmother since I was 2 years old, who is a Holocaust survivor. And so from a very early age, I heard her story of being a refugee in this country. And she would come to my classrooms and speak, and being able to work in the space and give some kind of credence to her story and give back was very important to me. So I think that's why I feel a personal connection to the immigration field. And then after college, I ended up working as a paralegal at an immigration law firm doing business immigration, and I just loved it. And we did a lot of NIWs, we did a lot of EB-1As. We mostly represented universities, and so researchers, some startups, and I just began to love the work and never looked back after that.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And I think, I'm coming from a science background, bioinformatics and machine learning and all that. But when I got my green card in EB-1, I also realized that there is a need for someone and people like us to talk about it and at least get people motivated to see that there are options beyond EB-2, specifically for people from India and China, where there's a lot of retrogression in EB-2 and EB-3.
Sure.
So yeah, that's amazing. And I think you already mentioned that your specialty is employment-based cases, but do you specifically work with EB-1, O1, or there's another set of classes that you work with as well?
Yeah, I have a pretty diverse background in immigration in general. I actually worked at the immigration court for a period of time, but I've done tons of perm, tons of Ls, NIWs, EB-1s, Os. So yeah, and I would say my favorite kind of cases are EB-1A or B and NIW and O1s. I really like learning about what you all do and your specialty, and then trying to make that digestible for the immigration officer. It makes my job never boring. I'm always learning. And so that's why I like working on those cases.
Right. And I think EB-1 requires a lot of research on both the ends, right? Even
Yeah.
the client and the attorneys.
Yeah, it's a lot of work for everybody.
So I think that leads or segues us into a new particular questions on EB-1. And one question that a lot of people have in their mind is like, am I eligible for EB-1, right? So how should one know that their EB-1 is feasible for them, or at least they can at least try in that category?
Yeah, it's a kind of a hard question to answer. But for EB-1A and B, what the officers are looking at are you an expert in your field? So what does that mean? It means that you have made an impact in the industry or in your field in a way that's outside of just your company or organization.
Yes.
So, for example, if you work at Amazon and you are, a senior level engineer, and you've done a lot of things to contribute to Amazon, that alone may not be enough. But if you can show that you've created some tool that all these other companies are relying on and using, and without that tool that you created, no one had been able to do that before, that's the kind of evidence that can help you win an EB-1A case. And so you want to start looking at your profile and figuring out how to measure that and whether you do have evidence like that.
Right. Right. And I think that's a very good example, because let's say if someone is a cloud architect, works for AWS, or have written some code which specifically works or enhances AWS, and that's being used by so many people, even I think federal agencies might be using AWS.
Right.
So I think that could be some potential evidence to showcase that you have done some extraordinary work. So that makes a lot of sense. And I think that leads to another question is some of the people, and I think still majority of people think that PhD is a requirement for EB-1. And I think with PhD, definitely you get a lot more added to your profile because you do a lot of research, you might be publishing and stuff. But if, let's say, someone doesn't have a PhD, is there a way to analyze their profile to make sure that they can at least try and apply in this category?
Yeah, I absolutely think so, and have done it for people who don't have PhDs. Really, the inquiry is, have you made an impact outside of your company or organization? I know that sounds like a kind of a simple question. And how do you measure that, and how do you figure that out? But if you have evidence that other people have relied on your work or are starting to mimic what you do, I worked on a case for a video game engineer. He didn't have a PhD. I think he had a bachelor's degree. But everyone in the industry started mimicking something that he had created, and he had, letters from people outside of his company that said, like, before he created this, no one was doing it, and now everybody's doing it. That's great evidence.
Right. And like in totality, in EB-1, you would have to prove that you satisfy the criteria, and also have a qualitative way of showing that your criteria in total show that you have that extraordinary ability. So in general, how many criteria do you tell people to get strong evidence for? Let's say if 3 out of 10 are required, like, do you want them more, like, do you want to have more criteria and evidence for that? Or you think that, no, if we go for only 3, because that's what we are aiming for, and we'll have a strong and petition with that?
There's no right answer to that question. I think the criteria can be a little deceptive sometimes. Okay, if I just mark off my 3 criteria, I'm good to go. And then I'm done. But going back to the question I keep talking about is, have you made an impact outside of your company? Have you made an impact in the field? So let's say you have peer-reviewed hundreds of articles, tons and tons of articles. You have one publication in some, like in TechCrunch. That's it. And then you you've contributed to your organization in some way that's critical.
Right.
Probably not enough. Not enough, right? Let's say you have one of each thing of the criteria, but none of them is very strong. None of them is a lot. And by strong and a lot, I mean, it doesn't show that you are the expert, and that's why you've accomplished this. Right. So, like, a high salary in comparison to others, right? The key question there is, are you getting paid more because you are an expert? You can check that off. Great. You meet the criteria, but that's not really going to help your case unless there's some evidence to show, like, okay, we usually pay software engineers this much, but this person has this very special skill and we want to keep them. And so we're going to pay them more.
Yep. That makes sense. And I think that leads to the other question is, what are the some myths that you have come across for EB-1, like where you talk to people and you know, oh, well, you're not thinking the right approach. It's not like this. You can apply and stuff. Like, for example, I have come across, when I was working on my case, I always had this feeling that you have to have a PhD to file an EB-1, otherwise you'll not be even accepted, right? So, but I was able to break that myth. Like, is there any famous myth you have come across that you think should be busted?
Yeah, lots of myths surrounding the EB-1A process. The PhD one is that you have to have a certain number of citations, that you must have citations in general. For example, if you're working with people who are not in the academic or research-based world, why would they have citations? There's no need. I've won cases with 0 citations. So, but if you are in an industry where research is important, then citations are important, and that's what they are going to be looking at. So it's kind of like, just depends on your industry. And then other myths, I think the one that I see the most, and this is for people who are just kind of starting to do research about the EB-1, is that if you check off 3 of the criteria, then you will win.
Exactly.
Maybe that's not the people who are listening to this, but I think I talk to a lot of people who are saying, oh, but I've done this and I've done this and I've done this, so why wouldn't I win? Right. And it's not that easy, unfortunately.
Exactly. I think that comes to that qualitative phase of analysis that USCIS is to make sure that you have achieved a lot in your field.
Yeah. So sometimes I think the criteria can feel a little deceptive. Like, oh, this is what they're telling me I need to do, and I'm doing it. But the big one is that last question.
Exactly.
You know, on the whole, taking all that criteria together, are you a leader in your field?
Yep. That makes a lot of sense. And I think with that, I have a small profile, right, which I have just created a hypothetical profile. And we don't have to have an answer saying that, oh, well, this will qualify or not, but some idea of what criteria you think this profile would fit, right? And what this profile can do to make sure they have a stronger petition, right? Just a very hypothetical question. So
okay, yeah, great.
That let's say I have a master's in computer science, and I've been working in software development. I have around 12 years of experience, and my role is termed as lead software developer. And I have 1 to 2 patents. Let's say 1 patent for now. And in media attention, I have some news article for the product that I have helped with the team develop. Then I have no critical role right now. My median salary is also very similar to other software engineers. It's not like very high. And in terms of peer review, I do review the code of others who are in my team before it gets to the production, which helps the company deliver the product. And what do you think about this profile in general? A lot of people resonate with that because a lot of people fall in this category.
Yeah. So the very first question I would have for this person is, what is your field of expertise? Software engineering, millions of people in the world who are experts in software engineering who have thousands of citations, who are more of a leader than you are in the field. So I need you to help me figure that out. That's always my first question for people. And so, can you narrow it? What specifically? Why did you get a patent? What changed the field when you did that?
Right.
And so maybe, AI, machine learning, also still really broad fields. You got to narrow it even more.
Right.
AI for bioinformatics. I don't know. Is that what you were saying? I don't know. What was your field of?
Mine is bioinformatics. Mine is
Yeah.
bioinformatics. Yes.
So you want to narrow it in those ways. Talk to your colleagues, figure out, talk to your friends, talk to your spouse. They usually know what your field of expertise is in terms that are easy to understand,
Right.
for someone who's not in the field.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first step. Then for this person, you probably do have a critical role in the company. That was something I noted. Maybe you don't think that you do, but you probably do. If you have a patent that your company has patented and is relying on, then you do. So that one, I wouldn't worry about that part of it so much.
Okay.
Then you want to try to do more things that are externally facing outside of your company. So the more that you talk to your manager, see if your manager, a lot of these big tech companies, they have competitions with their products against other people. Or once the product is launched, then they do press about it. Is there any way that you could be the spokesperson in some way for those things?
Yeah.
Sometimes companies are willing to help you do that. Your manager wants you to grow, and so they're going to help you put yourself out there in that way. So the more that you can find those externally facing types of activities where people outside of your company are going to be recognizing what you're going to be doing, the better. That's how you can continue to build your profile. Then for the patent, you want to be keeping track of metrics. How many people are using this patent? How many people, if there's other companies that are using it, let's say you built it for Microsoft and now all these like Yelp and all these other companies are relying on this tool. Then you want to be able to show those metrics, which you probably do for your evaluations at work anyway, but you keep track of it for your EB-1.
Right. No, that is an excellent advice. And I think a lot of people will be falling in this category. And if I think they're listening to it, they'll get an understanding of what exactly needs to be done so that they can prove that they have this, they fall for this category, or they can get approved for this category. Perfect. And I think that leads to the other question is, what are these steps? Like, a lot of people think that, okay, well, when I'm on H-1B and it's going to end, we'll think about EB-1 or EB-2. And till then, it's no worries because I can work, right? I can get my salary. But do you think that one should start working on their immigration journey from the very beginning of their career? Or do you think that they should just keep working on their profile, make sure it's basically becoming stronger by day and day, and then fall for EB-1? So I generally advise people to start from the very beginning, because then you can mold your profile the way you want it to be. But what's your approach on that?
Yeah, I would say the same thing. That what we say at DJO is the best day to get started is yesterday. Don't beat yourself up. First of all, you are an expert in your field probably already. You're accomplishing a lot at work. You have dealt with the stressful H-1B situation. I understand if you don't have capacity to start building your EB-1 profile.
Right.
So when you're ready, when you feel like you have capacity to work on it, it's a good thing to start to work on. And it helps build your professional life too. It's not just for immigration purposes.
Exactly. Perfect. And I think the second last question I have for you is in terms of the academic profile, because we discussed a little bit of technical profile, but people who are coming from, let's say, an academic background like me, who are like publishing research, or let's say having citations and peer review and stuff. So a lot of people come and ask, like, what is that magic number? Like, I have 500 citations, I have 20 papers. Would I qualify or not? So I always tell that there is no magic number. I think the totality of it should make sure that the work. So for example, I'm coming from organoid biology. So that is the future of organ transplant. So that's how I would write my petition, right? So how would you tell, let's say, an applicant well, what's exactly the things you should look for instead of the numbers to make sure your profile fits?
Yeah, so at my last job where we were doing a lot of these kinds of cases, I did kind of wonder what are the metrics of the cases that get approved.
Right.
And I think we were very critical, meaning we didn't test the waters that much. And so most of our profiles had at least 500 citations, which is a lot. It's a lot. I think we won some like between 300 and 500. That's a lot. But like you said, it's not a magic number and it's more of a sliding scale. So what do I mean by that? Let's say you only have 50 citations, but your work has been featured in Forbes and Inc. and all, I don't know where else you would be featured for, like Science magazine, you know. Then you don't need so many citations because you have more of this media. So like the other criteria, if they're very powerful to show that you have impacted the field, or like you were saying, like before you got involved in your space, there wasn't this technology that is allowing for organ transfer. Like that, if you can show that, then the citations become less important. So you're kind of doing this balancing act thing.
Right. Like talking about the research in terms of the value of the research rather than how many times it's being cited, right? So I think that...
Yeah, but value, you need to be able to show why it's valuable. Exactly. Like, you know, anyone can say like, this is valuable for organ transfer, but not a lot of people can show, okay, now everyone else in the industry agrees with me, you know, because now they're doing something, they're relying on it in some way. If it's not a citation, maybe for clinical trials. Okay, exactly. now we're doing all these clinical trials using this technology that this person created.
Yep. That's an amazing set of advice, definitely. And I think one last question before I will ask you for some words of wisdom for anyone who is watching this video is, a lot of people also have this confusion between O1 and EB-1, and they think that they're pretty similar. And if I get O1, I might have a very good chance for EB-1. And the other part of this question is, like, if someone doesn't want to be in this H-1B lottery hurdle, right? Because there's no surety of you being selected by the system. So which will you prefer, like going for an O1 and then transitioning to EB-1, or they should just directly think about EB-1 application?
So for the first question of the difference between O1 and EB-1, the O1 is much easier to get. Right. It even though the criteria are the same and on paper they look the same, in practice, the USCIS, they just think that it's easier to get an O1 than O1 and then an EB-1. So that's just your reality. If you get an O1, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win an EB-1.
Makes sense.
And the other difference is that you must have a US sponsor or you need to have a sponsor for your O1. For the EB-1, you do not need to have a sponsor job offer.
Got it. That could be EB-1A, right? You can be anywhere in the world to file it.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right. And then for the other question of like, what do I do about applying for the H-1B and should I just go for EB-1? It's possible. Yeah, it's possible to do. Usually it's a good idea if you can do the O1 first and then keep working on building your profile over time. Right. You're more likely to win it, I think. Right. Just depends on your profile. If you already have just this incredible profile, sure, why not go for the EB-1?
Makes sense.
The other thing I would say is that we're seeing more and more, and which is a really unfortunate trend, is that it's harder for people from India. It just is. You can have probably the same profile as someone from somewhere else. And for some reason, there's this misconception that you're trying to jump the line in some way.
Right.
And so that's just a reality that you will be facing. And so your profile has to be even stronger.
Yep. That's very important advice. And lastly, like any words of wisdom for anyone who's watching, and also, like, if it's okay for you, I'll put your LinkedIn in the description, and people can come and probably have their questions to you, and then you can guide them the best way you think. So before that, any words of wisdom before we close today's session?
Yeah, I would just say that you can start doing small things today that can help you in the long run. It can feel very overwhelming to be like, oh, I need 500 citations. That's so not what I'm going to be able to do with my
Right.
life. But in reality, you can take smaller steps that are going to build your profile. So talk to your manager and just see, are there any things externally facing press
Right.
type things I can do? Reach out to an old professor and say, are there any organizations that, you know, I should be a part of to have more impact in my industry?
Mm.
Those are really small steps that maybe you could just set aside 5 minutes of your day to do,
Yep.
and that could help you build your profile. So that's my biggest piece of advice,
Yes.
not to get overwhelmed. And if you do, it's okay, because it is a lot of work. And
Exactly.
I don't envy people who have to go through that, because you are already doing a lot.
Exactly. Yes. Small steps, but structured steps would definitely take you there.
Yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much for Tess, for coming onto the channel and sharing your insights on EB-1 and other aspects of immigration. And hopefully we'll have another session sometime in the future. But till then, I'll definitely ask people to reach out to you with their questions. And once again, thank you, and hope everyone has a great weekend. And this we'll have another video pretty soon. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you.